Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics need counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko and my co-host, Dr. Issues.
Hello, everybody.
This is issue number 18, where we cover the masked vigilante, Casey Jones, from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise.
Okay, I might need a little bit of help here because I did research on the train conductor.
What did you do? Just sit and listen to Grateful Dead for like 3 hours?
I didn't have any cocaine. You know.
Well, then it's not really research on Casey Jones, then, is it?
Well, I didn't get into any crashes, so...
That's fair. That is a great song, by the way. So before we get started, as always, you can find us on capesonthecouch.live. We are distributed through the Libsyn Network, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Twitter account. We've got a Patreon page where you can subscribe at the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. Our email address is capesonthecouch@gmail.com. If you want to shoot us any questions, comments, we ask that you like, subscribe, leave a positive rating and review for whatever platform you have that you listen to this podcast on. We definitely appreciate all of the support. So 18 issues in, and we are finally getting to our first hero that is not in the Marvel DC duopoly. We mentioned that the Question didn't start off as a DC hero, but Charlton Comics was bought out by DC. But Casey Jones and the Ninja Turtles have never been done by one of the big two. So this really represents a new possibility and a new area for us. So I'm personally intrigued by this. At least it's one of those little things that, I don't know, I care about. I don't know if anybody else does.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I think it gives credence to the idea that you don't have to be in the big two to make it big.
Yeah, and you definitely don't need to be in the big two to make a compelling character. And I'm pretty sure a lot of folks are aware of that between Dark Horse and Mirage and IDW and Image and all those other Top Cow and all those other secondary distribution platforms and markets. There's a lot of really great stuff coming out. But before we get started, did you see Ant-Man and the Wasp last week?
Absolutely.
Oh, man. It's awesome. I don't want to say it's as good as the first one, because the first one I thought did an amazing job of just creating that world. But I do like where they took some of the characters, and I definitely appreciate the fact that the Wasp had so much screen time and was given a much greater character arc outside of just Scott. I really like the interaction. I liked the interactions in the first one between Hope and Hank, but I thought that the evolution of their relationship and some of the stuff that they talked about, and then Janet and all that quantum realm stuff, I like that they kind of made fun of the fact that there was a lot of quantum realm gobbledygook scientific stuff being thrown about there. So I'm not going to spoil anything. Also, post-credit scenes, top notch. So if you haven't seen it already, go check out Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I'm not just shilling it because I happen to be a Marvel fanboy. I'm telling you because it's a legitimately damn good movie. Much better than, say, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which I will not see, but I've heard a lot of bad things about. Solo was pretty solid, though. I'm just, going back over the last couple of weeks in terms of movie blockbusters.
Solo is surprising because from what I understand, in the midst of shooting, they actually had the actor playing Solo. They wanted him to get a new acting coach. That's usually a really bad sign. Yeah,
well, I mean, they switched directors halfway through the film process. So, but I don't have a problem with him. I don't think he's certainly not the best actor in the world, but he's playing a very different version of Han Solo than Harrison Ford. But I digress. Go see Solo, don't see Jurassic World, and go see Ant-Man and the Wasp. But back to Casey Jones, who's been in a number of different movies and cartoon series, and we're not going to talk about any of them because that's not what we do here. We talk about the comics. We can mention them a little bit. I don't really want to talk about Stephen Amell, though, because that was That was not a good Casey Jones. I'm sorry. He can do the salmon ladder like a son of a gun, but that does not give him any ability to be a effective Casey Jones. I didn't like it.
Nah, my favorite part, if we're going to mention anything about the TV shows, the original cartoon was I'll be honest, I don't even remember the voice actor, but did a spot on Dirty Harry.
Yeah. Well, I liked Elias Codius from the first and third ones. I thought he did an amazing job. But let's get into the comic background. So Casey Jones, ally of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird and made his first appearance in Raphael, Me, Myself, and I from April of 1985. So each of the four main turtles had their own solo comic, and that's where Casey was introduced in that one. So before we get started into Casey, I want to mention it's kind of difficult to cover Casey or any of the other Ninja Turtle characters because the comics have changed publishers so many times that each time they do, it's kind of a reboot of the history and the background of the characters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the first run of the Ninja Turtles comics was under Mirage Comics, and this was the Eastman and Laird created the Ninja Turtles as a kind of a Daredevil Frank Miller spoof. So you had Splinter instead of Stick, you had the Foot Clan instead of the Hand. So it was very much a pastiche of those very dark and gritty Frank Miller comics before he went really, really crazy, when he was just sort of dark and gritty. So Arnold Casey Jones, because Arnold is actually his first name in the comics. Casey's just a middle name. So Arnold Casey Jones grew up in Brooklyn. So as a child, he was beaten up by a gang, and this led to him idolizing some vigilante characters. And eventually he just watched so much TV that he convinced himself that he was going to clean up the streets himself. So he encounters some muggers, and basically he's beating them to death until Raphael jumps in and stops him.
For some of the people that don't know the background with that, Raphael is an awesome fighter. And for him to take it upon himself to stop someone from beating someone up, that should tell you just how far Casey was going.
Yeah, he was not holding back at all. And even Raph, who is not known to be the nicest of the Ninja Turtles or the most compassionate, says, you're taking this thing a little too far. I need you to dial it back a bit. So they have a couple of skirmishes until they decide to help each other attack the muggers. So then Casey helps the Turtles, Splinter, and April when they're attacked in April's house by the Shredder, and they retreat to Casey's grandmother's old farm. On a side note, this is sort of done it's altered a little bit, but that's basically the first Ninja Turtles movie. Does an excellent job of adapting the introduction of Casey Jones. I know in the film, it was actually April's family's farm, and Splinter wasn't in the house when they were attacked, and it was the store. But the point is that Raph and Casey get off to a rough start until Casey meets the rest of the Turtles, and then he helps them, and they all go escape to the farm. And that first Ninja Turtles movie, I know the effects are a little out of date, and it was done in like 1988 or 89, but that movie still holds up as far as I'm concerned. I saw that in the theaters way back in the day, and that movie kicks ass. Ninja kick the damn rabbit. Do something. So over time, he and April O'Neil begin to get closer, and they have a relationship until he accidentally kills a teenager. It was a mugging, and it was a fight, and he accidentally kills a teenager. So then this drives him into alcoholism, and they split because he gets depressed and drinks himself silly.
In the previous episode, we had mentioned like the one incident with Hank Pym. I think this qualifies. Like it's pretty bad.
Yeah, this is not Casey's finest moment. So in the City at War storyline, which I think was like 13 issues long, he meets a pregnant waitress named Gabrielle, and he falls in love with her, and they get married. She dies in childbirth, unfortunately, and he raises the daughter on his own, and he names her Shadow. So he returns to New York City, and he reunites with April, and they reignite their relationship, and they end up getting married, and they raise Shadow together until April learns she's actually a drawing come to life courtesy of the Kirby Warp Pen.
Wah, wah.
I have nothing to say about this. It's certainly one of the more outlandish things I've ever read in comics, and that says something because I've read some really out there stuff. But the fact that April O'Neil was never a human, she was a drawing that came to life because somebody had a crystal and they attached it to a pen and everything he drew came to life. And he looked like Jack Kirby and he was named Kirby. Kirby King, I think, was his name in the comics. So I wonder who the inspiration for that could have been. That's a little on the nose, even for me. So that was in, I think, volume 2 of the Mirage comics. And then later on, volume 4, it kind of references that Casey and April are married at this point. They're older. Shadow is now a teenager. Now, why did I jump from 2 to 4? Because number 3 is actually the Image Comics volume. And this is where things get a little wonky with the Ninja Turtles as an IP and moving around to different publishers. So the Ninja Turtles were under Mirage for the first 2 volumes. Then Image Comics comes along and they're supposed to be a follow-up to the Mirage, but things go, I guess, way, way out of canon because Eastman and Laird were no longer involved with them at this point. It was being written by a completely different creative team. And this has basically been stricken from canon as far as all parties are concerned. Like whatever happened in the Image Comics doesn't really apply, but we're going to talk about it anyway. So this kind of follows up on Mirage Volume 2. Casey's still struggling with some alcoholism and he's still very, very violent and aggressive. Now he's wearing an American flag colored hockey mask. America, yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like if they were to do this now, and I'm not making this as a political comment, it would probably, instead of him wearing an American flag hockey mask, it would be Make America Great Again cap.
Yeah, or his mask would just say Make America Great Again. It would just be, red with the letters on it. So was it Mirage, goes to Image, goes back to Mirage, then it moves to IDW, and this is where they decided to just reboot the entire thing. Now, in the IDW continuity, he is a young hockey player and he's on a scholarship until his mother dies from cancer while he's young. And his father can't handle this, so he becomes an alcoholic who beats Casey repeatedly. Then he befriends Raphael, who saves him from another beating. So it's similar in that Raphael tends to be the first Ninja Turtle that he meets, and I think it's because of who Raph is as a character, that mutual aggression type of mindset, because Raph is certainly the most aggressive of the turtles and Casey is the vigilante. And I think it works that they are always the first ones to interact. And so they build a strong relationship as a result of that.
So then would Raphael qualify as a snapping turtle? I've noticed in the past few weeks that the puns really have gone on my side as opposed to yours.
Yeah, I mean, I love me a good pun. And don't get me wrong.
But that wasn't a good pun.
Well, no, and that's why I appreciate them, because I appreciate the horrible puns, but you still make them. So he ends up meeting the rest of the turtles, and then he meets April, and he's the one who introduces April to the rest of the turtles as opposed to her meeting them on her own. So his father becomes Hun, the leader of the Purple Dragons, and he, meaning Hun, becomes allied with the Shredder. And Hun says to Casey, join me and we can rule the galaxy as father and son. No, he says to Casey, basically, join me in the Purple Dragons and we can take over New York. And Casey goes, piss on that and piss on you, and nearly dies as a result of it. So then he ends up dating April and he's working for her parents in the second time around little store that they've got. So there's a couple of running threads throughout the Casey Jones history. Obviously, his relationship with April O'Neil is one of them, his friendship with the Ninja Turtles. But as far as the issues go, let's start first and foremost with the vigilantism. This, I think, is one of the key points to Casey Jones. Is he's always the vigilante. He is the masked man in the hockey mask with all the sports equipment, whether it's hockey sticks, baseball bats, a cricket club. Cricket, that kind of game. You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
Oh, my gosh.
I love that movie. It is an amazing film.
Okay.
And by the way, Casey Jones was voiced by Chris Evans in the TMNT animated movie. So another reason why I love Chris Evans, because he's an awesome dude. So the vigilantism, I don't want to say it's justified, but at least in the Mirage and the IDW, they give it that explanation of he comes from a violent background, and particularly with the Mirage, he's beaten by a gang and he feels that he needs to do something about it. And it's almost implied in the Mirage continuity that because he spent so much time watching TV after his beating, that it left him with some sort of injury, some long lasting brain injury, whether it's PTSD or what have you. And then he watches all these TV shows and he idolizes like a Charles Bronson Death Wish type thing, that he almost becomes like a Punisher style character, but it stems from that beating. So I don't know if you want to address the vigilante aspect of the character.
Well, first of all, any vigilantism is going to be considered justified. That's the whole point of vigilantism. You're right. And regardless of what the social construct is, what the laws are, or what people think, you're going to do what you think is the proper action to get results. Now, the violence involved with this level of vigilantism is quite disturbing, to say the least. The idea that might makes right is something from King Arthur. It's not new. Samurai in Far East Asian cultures, the idea that you have to defend your honor at all costs, and if it's betrayed, you actually end your life. I mean, I'm not trying to say that those things are the proper way that we should view them for time immortal. I am saying that it's not new. The way Casey does it with reckless abandon, the way that he's portrayed in the comics, is incredible because it points to a complete disregard for his own safety. Ironically, wearing a hockey mask, which is considered for protection, but it's more along the lines of you don't have to rely on anyone else to fight your battles. And in a way, that's noble, but it also means that you don't get the perspective of everyone else around you. Everything gets relegated to pretty much, and he uses this term frequently, the trash. He views other people as trash. He doesn't see their worth. I understand that they are also doing wrong. They make it very clear he's always fighting crime. It's not a matter of saying he's picking the wrong people to fight, but he doesn't seem to understand the idea that just because you did something wrong doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be physically attacked and maybe impacting people more than you realize.
Disproportionate retribution.
Exactly. Thank you for being way more articulate than me in many ways.
Well, don't credit me. I credit TV tropes. Basically, anytime you hear me use a phrase or something like that, I always give. Plus, I always end up crediting it in the show notes anyway. I love that site. Seriously. I can't wait until we get big enough that we get our own entry on TV tropes. And I've tweeted at them. I'm like, I want to get big enough to the point that this show gets its own TV tropes page, because I think that's when we'll have made it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to go back to the vigilantism just a bit, it also means that you make the rules. You are the law. And
I am the law.
And Judge Dredd should be someone we do, just not in Sylvester Stallone's voice, please.
Okay.
Thank you. You know what? I take that back because I love that movie. I really did.
I never saw it.
Okay, so now that my brain's reset, Casey really takes his violence a bit too seriously. That may sound weird, but the point is when someone gets in a fight, it's usually more for preservation or there's a greater conflict at hand. That's why we have soldiers, et cetera, et cetera. But at this point, it's taken a life of its own. And as we've already stated, when you need a fellow aggressive hero to let you know, you're going a bit too far, you really need to take that seriously.
Casey, you're at about an 11. I need you at about a 3.
Yeah.
So the next issue, and this is something that, again, is brought up particularly in the Mirage and Image continuity, is the alcoholism. And what I find interesting is because in that continuity, his father was an alcoholic. And Casey uses that as a crutch. Now, I'm not saying that every child of an alcoholic becomes a teetotaler, but what happens many times is that the children, particularly who are the victims of an abusive alcoholic, shy away from it. In Casey's instance, he leans into it. So I don't know if you can discuss what leads to someone making that determination that he ends up becoming more like his father, who he did not have a solid relationship with.
There's a significant amount of research that indicates that there's a genetic predisposition for certain addictions. Alcoholism is definitely one of them. Conversely, there's also, and this is just a random factoid, there's a certain enzyme in your liver that allows you to process alcohol. And certain bloodlines have less of it. So what happens is they get pretty much the effects of alcohol fairly quickly. Unfortunately, it sounds like with Casey and his father, it's the opposite. They have built up high tolerances, which leads to, needing more of it. We've done this on several occasions. I'm going to tie this in, though, directly with the vigilantism, because it's fuel. It's just the opportunity to pour gasoline on a fire that's already lit. We already talked about disinhibition I think that was the Tony Stark episode.
Yeah.
Okay. But the point being, at least with Tony Stark, you could see somehow the greater good as to what he was trying to do. With Casey, it's basically, all right, that's just more opportunity to fight. And I'm
liquored up. Now whose ass do I need to kick?
Exactly. We call them beer muscles for a reason. You are willing to put more on the line when you feel like you have no pain.
And he's not Jackie Chan, Legend of Drunken Master. He's got, again, depending on the continuity, he has some background in sports, but
if you're going to mention Legend of the Drunken Master, Americans don't know how that really ended. They think that fight after he drinks the industrial strength alcohol, he wins it and everything, he burps up this huge bubble, and they say he's recovering. No, in the Japanese version, they show what happened. He went blind, and now he was trying to learn blind fighting. So alcohol is dangerous, people. Just letting you know.
I did not know that.
Yeah. It's actually pretty disturbing the way he does, because Jackie Chan does this cross-eyed thing to indicate that he's blind and all this stuff. But it was I get it that it's funny, but it's also pretty tragic, which actually ties right back into, a situation with Casey Jones. He obviously did it for emotional effect, but yeah, there was nothing good that comes of it. And statistically, it's much more likely that you're going to end up doing the same thing that your parent did when it comes to alcohol, as opposed to, you're right, there is a subsection that will shun it, will go away from it. And ironically, I think that would have been a great way to go with this character, because can you imagine someone like Casey Jones in a straight edge society?
He would be like CM Punk on another level. I'm straight edge, and that makes me better than you. Now I'm going to beat you down.
He would be if you cross CM Punk with Brock Lesnar, basically.
Ooh.
Because I'd rather think of Brock Lesnar when it comes to fighting as opposed to CM Punk, considering how he just got his... But you know what? Let's not go there. I'm sorry.
So the last one, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but he has issues with personal relationships, and he tends to keep a lot of people at a distance, and he has trouble with that personal relationship. We see it happens a lot with April, where as soon as things start going wrong, he hits the bottle and he pushes her away. He obviously had a very rough relationship with his father. Now, in the IDW history continuity, he ultimately sort of reconciles with his father, because his father begins to see the error in his ways, and he moves away from the Purple Dragons, I believe. But the point is that Casey does not get close to people easily, and he doesn't allow people to get close to him. And I think that is in large part because of his background, and it ties into the vigilantism. It ties into the alcoholism. I think it's a symptom of everything else that's going on with his life. And then coupled with the IDW continuity, where his mother dies from cancer, and therefore he loses that connection. So all of these things tie together. Casey Jones is not warm and fuzzy.
Very good point. It also, I think, pertains to why he gravitates to sports in the first place. You need some level, and we've gone over this I don't know how many times, you need some level of human interaction that's considered affectionate, positive. It needs to be collaborative. And usually you'll get that in a sports environment, except he gets the tar beat out of him by other kids. So when it comes to peer groups, he got the lesson early. He did not belong. So who's he going to fall back on? Dad? Whoops. Mom? Gone. Nobody else. But he's not depressed. He doesn't think society is lost. He doesn't think he's unworthy. He knows that it's messed up and he needs to fix it. Now, what everyone else does after that point, to him, that's irrelevant. He never got past that first step. So the idea that someone else reciprocates feelings for him, and let's be honest, we've seen that situation time after time where some people get attracted to the bad boys. So he gets an interest. What's he going to do? He has no idea. Not a clue.
Well, I was going to say that ties in with Gabrielle. The reason why he falls for Gabrielle in the first place is because she takes care of him after he gets beaten up at her diner, and she takes care of him and they fall for each other. And it's a situation where Gabrielle, I don't think it necessarily started off as a rebound thing after April, but it escalated very, very quickly because he was looking for something that he felt he didn't deserve. Gabrielle, I don't remember off the top of my head what the situation was, why she was pregnant, but not with the baby's father. But the point is that she was pregnant already when she met Casey. And I think it was a situation where they were both, quote unquote, damaged people, and they found in each other what they were missing within themselves.
Right. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I can respect that. There's another aspect to this. He's incredibly protectionist. He wants to make sure that people around him are safe. He does it by lashing out, by attacking the enemy. Understood. But when you're in a home environment and there's no other enemy, where's he going to put that energy? It's going to lead to some extra friction purely because he is used to having that. It just becomes a natural state of mind.
Well, and he does that with Shadow, who, again, he raises as his own. He helps train her. She ends up being mentored by Splinter and, of course, the Turtles, who she sees almost as uncles. And so she becomes very adept at ninjutsu and the martial arts from a very young age, because when you grow up in an environment where you're surrounded by master martial artists, you're going to pick up a thing or two. So Shadow in the various continuities, particularly the Mirage Volume 4, becomes a very skilled martial artist, more so, certainly more so than her father and even April, her stepmom. So that's, I think, where he channels some of that protectionism. And we see that again with the way that he is with April and the Turtles and Splinter and Shadow. So there is some benefit to it. He just misplaces it sometimes. So moving into treatment in universe. And again, we encounter this a lot with heroes. How do you address the issues while still letting him be a good person and generally heroic?
I'm actually going to do a cop-out here because I think he has a fantastic role model for it in Splinter. I think that if he were in a much more, I already mentioned the protectionism that he naturally follows. He just wants to create a safe environment. If he could just transition that, and now you already mentioned Shadow, but if he could transition that as a whole in his life to just having a bit more discipline, the idea that you can control a situation with ways besides aggression, besides violence. He needs to really temper that. And he has someone that has shown the ability to do that. So rather than focusing so much on improving his martial arts skills, which is great, focus on his meditation. Focus on some of the other techniques that Splinter has tried again and again and again to get the Turtles to understand, let alone anybody else. And, you usually see him a bit exasperated by how they just don't quite understand where he's coming from. If he could really tap into that, I think he would be much more reasonable in his approach.
He'd be a better father. He would be a better husband, and potentially, dare I even say, a better fighter if he could channel that aggression into using it at the right moment instead of lashing out. It's unfocused energy versus focused energy. I think there's certainly something to be said there. So out of universe, you've got a pissed off alcoholic vigilante who has trouble with personal relationships and feels that the world is filled with trash and those who are less than or unworthy. And he's got a bit of a messiah complex. He needs to fix people, or at the very least, save the world, protect innocence, and beat the tar out of anybody for the slightest instance.
First thing I have to do is I have to make sure he knows he can let his guard down a little bit. And the best way I can do that is to show that I'm not a threat. Stance, honestly, from the emergency room standpoint, starts. If I'm a security officer dealing with him, I usually keep my arms folded in front of me, and I don't smile, I don't laugh. I also don't try and make funny faces or anything. I want to make sure that he understands my authority. I'm not security, though. I'm trying to be a little different. So it's a good idea usually to have someone that's security nearby in case things go wrong, but more importantly, to show the difference. Okay, you have...
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, you can look at it that way. Yeah. And I'll get not in their personal space. That's a horrible idea. But I'll show that, there can be a space that's not threatening, but still close enough that you can read my facial cues. You can see my gestures, all the things that someone that's hyper vigilant is going to want to know. They basically are trying to take everything in to see if I'm a threat. And as long as my hands are open, as long as I'm making good eye contact, not trying to eyeball them, but just saying, okay, I'm resonating, using my more calm voice as opposed to a more authoritarian voice. And you've noticed, I'm sure many people listening to this, I usually try and end things on either a medium tone or an elevated tone because that's non-threatening. When I end on a down tone, that sounds more authoritative. So first I've de-escalated everything. Then from there, I can start asking him, what's going on, man? Just try to relate to him like a human being and get what his issue is with other people. Like, what are they doing wrong? I'm not bringing it to him yet. I'm not going to call him out on hypocrisy or anything of the sort. I just want to know what's wrong out there. What are you doing about it? And let's see if we can clean it up a bit. That's all. Not trying to change every aspect of who he is. If he brings up a topic, great. We'll sit on that as long as we can. But in that sense, he'd be running that part of the show. I'm not trying to dictate what is being spoken of when. Because the second that I try and take over, then it's just a pissing match. And that doesn't go anywhere. So the nuts and bolts of this have already been talked about, I think, in other episodes. The alcoholism. Okay, treat the alcoholism. There are so many ways to do that. The idea that someone is a vigilante, I'll admit, doesn't come up at work per se, but the idea that someone wants to protect their family and all of that and gets into a lot of fights and views society in a certain way, yeah, that definitely comes up a lot. And it's really hard to get someone to turn inward because everything outside of them is a problem. Once you can shift things a bit back inward, it helps out a lot. I'm going to give a medical option as well. Not something that I would say is a treatment. I'm saying I want to have the information. I want to know what that person's testosterone levels are. Because what I've seen happen on more than one occasion, depending on the person's age, is that they've had a recent spike, like kind of a last surge, not puberty or anything, but like a last surge basically before they go into what some people refer to as male menopause or things like that. That surge can put someone in a different mindset where if they didn't have this behavior before and it's starting to manifest over the past few months, it's something to look at. And they might need to see an endocrinologist. That's rare, but it's something that comes up once in a while. So take a look. Or regular hormones, thyroid hormones, like just overall metabolism, just things to look at. The last thing that I would really want to make sure of is, for the most part, these people have the best of intentions. And I don't want to crush that. I don't want them to think, do nothing, be a doormat or anything like that. I want them to still have that spirit, but I want to show them alternatives on how they could potentially talk things out. You don't have to be eloquent about it, but you got to make sure that you have different tools in your toolbox. Boy, oh boy, that's going to become a trope in and of itself because I say that so often, but it's the truth. Medications, if it's more ingrained in the person's personality, may help a little bit, may take the edge off, not really focusing on it because for the most part, these people are who they are. And that's okay. It's just as long as they're able to have improvements in their relationships and as long as they're willing to continue to talk to you about it. That's the number one thing. Keep the dialogue going. However long it takes, that's how long it takes. I'm not going to rush them.
All right. So it sounds like a real life Casey Jones would have a lot to work on, but also a lot to work from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. Very cool. So now let's take all of this, and as we always do, let's see what happens when Casey Jones ends up on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Casey. I'm Dr. Issues. You know, I'm here to help you. I have no intention of going anywhere, so you might as well talk to me.
And say what? You want me to talk about my feelings, my childhood, my marriage?
Actually, yes. Any of those topics would be a good place to start.
Look, it's simple. They were bad guys. I kicked their ass. Sometimes the turtles help, sometimes they don't. Either way, the scum gets cleaned. You're welcome.
Okay, I'll bite. And how does that make you feel, Casey?
You know, when I'm wiping blood off the blade of an Easton Stealth CX with a 100 flex after knocking some little punk's teeth out, I can't lie, Doc. It feels pretty damn good.
Yeah, it does sound horrible to be beaten severely and not quite understand why. I mean, it's not fair. By the way, what's some of the trash doing when they're getting beat up? You know, I mean, do you really know their stories?
They're mugging, they're raping, they're hurting innocent people. I mean, that's the difference between them and me. I don't go after people that don't deserve it.
Okay, so now they have this image of you, man. You're saying you made it all better. I'm saying they have nightmares or they want revenge.
So what? At least they're not hurting anyone else. I mean, that's all I care about. I don't give a rat's ass sorry, Splinter. I don't care what they're scared of. If they think twice before stealing a purse or getting their rocks off on someone who don't want it, I did my job.
So when their families see their broken faces and their children weep without the knowledge of what started it, what about them? What becomes of them? I mean, are you there to explain it?
You know, as long as they can speak, and I don't always break jaws, they can tell their kids about how they didn't take no for an answer, or that they really needed that necklace that wasn't theirs. So you're not going to make me feel guilty, Doc.
This isn't about guilt, okay? They're human, Casey. Same as you.
Then they should act like it.
I'm pretty sure they do when they're screaming and giving up.
Then that's when I'll give up. Until then, I have a lot more asses to kick.
I can see that you're incredibly focused on this, but you know what? I'm going to take you down a trip to the future. Do you want to be an 80-year-old old man chasing after people that are like a quarter of your age with a hockey stick?
No, because by then my daughter and my grandkids will do it. And I'm going to be the one to show them how.
Oh, you're just so... Casey, what if they say no? I got something here. Is that really what your legacy is going to be? A guy that beats people up and says he has a good reason for it?
I'm not going to say you're right or you're wrong, but you're a pretty smart guy, Doc.
All right, Casey, I'll admit this. The world needs good fighters, good protectors. You know, but for a guy with such a big tool bag, you're only using one.
Hey, I am happily married, Doc, and she is very satisfied with my tool bag.
No, Casey. Oh, man. I meant your outside, physical tool bag.
Yeah, I got rackets. I got a Louisville Slugger. You ever play cricket?
And here I thought you were getting my deeper meaning.
I'm just messing with you, Doc. Don't worry about it. I get it.
Okay. You know what? I want this to be productive for you, so let me sum it up real quick. Keep fighting bad guys, but you can help people in other ways too, okay? Like, or be a hockey coach or something. You know, for crying out loud. I mean, it would be so much better.
Well, I guess it would be a lot easier on the joints. I'll see if I could find a team somewhere. Maybe I could become a gym teacher.
Gym teacher, that's good. And just go easy on them in dodgeball.
Well, you know, I don't want them getting totally soft now, so... Dare I say it? I think you actually got through to someone.
Well, I'm not exactly sure I could be a hockey coach or a gym teacher in a treatment plan, but hey, something.
I mean, I'd like to become a hockey coach. Not that I necessarily have any underlying aggression that needs to be worked out, but I've been playing hockey for 20 years. So I could see myself getting into hockey coaching. All right. I play already, and it'd be a good way to vent my aggression, whatever energy I need to get out, and then I could teach my kids how to play.
Yeah.
So
sounds good.
I think I will take your advice to Casey Jones and apply it to my own life.
Awesome.
See, this show does help people.
Oh. We are an entertainment show, people. Entertainment. I swear to God, if I ever actually write down be a hockey coach or gym teacher on a treatment plan, I'll probably be fired.
Well, I think it may be an unorthodox thing, but I don't think you'd be fired for it.
Oh, you don't know my employers.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to about do it for this week. Next week, we're going to cover Scarecrow, a.k.a. Jonathan Crane from DC Comics, and then we're going to follow him up with another Batman villain. Also, I guess from the Batman Begins, we'll go back to back on the Batman Begins. I just realized that we're going to do Scarecrow and then Ra's al Ghul. So we've got Batman back to back. Just sort of worked out that way. We were just like, we haven't done as many DC as Marvel. We've been on a Marvel kick lately, as Casey Jones notwithstanding. So I want to bring it back a little more balanced.
If there were only some way that we could get input on having characters picked once in a while.
Yes. If only there were some way. Oh, wait, there is. You can subscribe to our Patreon. $1 a month gets you a shout out. $3 gets you early access downloads and a monthly blooper reel. $5 gets you a longer uncensored version of the skit. And $10 means that you get to pick one character every month and decide that we should do that particular character. And we will answer any questions that you have. And we also take some suggestions from our listeners via our Twitter on Capes on the Couch. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Capes on the Couch. We have an email address, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. And you can find this show at our website, capesonthecouch.live. And we are distributed through the Libsyn Network. And that is on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. So there are a number of ways that you can get in contact with us. We love the feedback. We love hearing from you each and every week as the show continues to grow. I know it makes it that much more fun for Doc and I to do the show. And it gives us something to shoot for. And we certainly appreciate hearing from each and every one of you week in and week out. So like I said, next week, Scarecrow and then Ra's al Ghul. And we'll see what happens from there. So, Doc, anything you want to add before we head out?
I wonder, when Casey Jones is swinging that stick at someone's skull, does he watch his speed?
I don't know. I just hope he's not on cocaine. So that's going to do it for Doc Issues. I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.